Yo, that beat was so very nice. Today I want to speak about the bigot God. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like when you draw off a religion and scripture and you're dealing with God, you're dealing with a bigot, a contradictory, um, egomaniac bigot. That's what God is, yeah? And it doesn't matter what evidence you put in front of religious people's face to show them that God's a bigot, you're just going to get an emotional reaction. But because everybody's talking about this moronic virus, moronic variant, Omicron or whatever they call it, I don't want to talk about that shit, man. So I just figured I'm going to talk myself through this, the bigot called God, for the next hour. Then pass by my sister and see how she is. But yeah, God's a bigot, man, and it only takes you to read the Bible, read the Torah, read the Quran, this Abrahamic one God, yeah, who seems to be different in every religion, even though the devil's the same in all of them religions. This bigot called God, once you start reading the Old Testament, you're dealing with a whole bunch of killing, a whole bunch of lying, deception, a whole bunch of lust, rape, incest, slavery, favoritism. When you're dealing with the scriptures, Abrahamic scriptures, monotheism, and you're dealing with religion and God, that they're the subjects that you're dealing with just as much as you're dealing with love, peace, and happiness, and God loves everyone and caring and sharing. It's two extremes when you read these scriptures. It's like heads and tails. And what religion likes to do in an institutional sense, in the modern day sense, is to focus you on all the good stuff that God's talking about in these scriptures. Heaven, and if you're a Muslim, you're going to have 80,000 virgins given to you when you enter Jannah, heaven. You get me? And paradise and rivers with milk and honey. You understand? And wine and happily ever after and sitting on clouds. You know what I mean? And all of these promises and good stuff, what the scriptures are giving you, and then with the same breath, it tells you about hell. And you'll be burned to death. And when you burn, you'll be resurrected and burn again. And as the Quran says, you'll drink from that. What's the tree called again? Where the tree is like this hot pus. That's the only thing you'll have to drink. You won't be able to drink anything. So with the same breath, this all-loving God, that's all hippie, flower power and shit, turns into this like really vengeful, spiteful, have to make my point God. Do you understand? So we're definitely dealing with Jekyll and Hyde when you're dealing with God, but a lot of people don't want to speak on it. Why? It's because they've not been programmed to speak on it. So for the person who hasn't traveled that thought path, gone through that enough times in his head and what if this and question and scrutinize, for the person who's never done that, it's very hard for them to speak on these truths and kind of realize them, because a lot of people don't speak about this stuff because it makes them question their shit. It makes them have to like re-scrutinize this stuff. So that's why I wanted to speak today about um, the bigot who the world calls God, because I've written quite a length about this subject in various different aspects when it comes to this bigot games being played by this God of the scriptures. Yeah, so who paneteru menunut shayu kawun lalul bihu. Nothing would exist except by way of the Neteru. Yeah? And I bear witness that nothing would exist if Anu Elyon Elyoinel didn't create it. Yeah, the Most High, whichever name you want to call him, in whichever language. Yeah. So if we go back to the beginning of the human experience, society, human populations, cultures, yeah, every culture took pride in defining this universe for themselves. And one of the first realizations that our ancestors came to, let me put some in the background. Our ancestors came to the realization that this universe was sacred, and creation in itself, or the physical reality, life, is sacred. Do you understand what I'm saying? And they had various different signs and symbols that they had associated with the sacredness of divinity or God. Do you understand what I'm saying? Whether it's to do with the hieroglyphs, certain rituals, we, our ancestors, mapped out what this physical realm was, what it was made of, how it was made, what governs it, how to interact with it so it could work for you, how to be in alignment with it so you could come under the protection and stay in the natural order of things. We define divinity for ourselves, and we defined it through nature, and we use nature as the glyphs to symbolize this divinity. Life in itself, being alive, feeling alive, for us was divine. So life itself to us was divinity. And because all life came from Mother Nature, we see Mother Nature as divine. So what did they say? They use the word zoomorphic to say when you use animals and stuff, or you speak about non-human things in a human sense to make it appear like they're human. We did that. We spoke about divinity in human terms, being human, having a human experience ourselves. Do you understand? But we used Mother Nature to define this divinity that we called life, that was a blessing for us. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the principalities that governed this Mother Nature for us was what we call Neteru, which was the principalities, which is or are the principalities of nature. So, with that being said, it was a science as well as a spirituality for us at the same time. Our science and our spirituality was one thing. We didn't separate them. Like alchemy is like a perfect combination of spirituality and science. That's why we had alchemy, because science was magical for us, and there wasn't a physical explanation for every thing, because some things were spiritual. They defied physical explanation. So we had our spiritual science entwined into alchemy based on these principalities of nature that we formed into what's called a periodic table. The periodic table that you have in science, with hydrogen and helium and carbon and oxygen going all the way up. I think they got something like 118 elements now, but originally there was 99 natural elements. Other elements come out of a combination of one or two more elements. So our ancestors presented that, okay, these are the 99 building blocks or elements. And for us, it wasn't just like, okay, this is a science elementary chart or a periodic table. Your science was linked to your religion, was linked to your spirituality, was linked to your politics, was linked to history. It was holistic. Do you see what I'm saying? So when we had the science table, we wouldn't just have hydrogen as the first element. The first element would also be the first nature, or the first neteru, which would be atom. So atom would be symbolic of hydrogen. And then we'd have another deity symbolic of helium. You understand? And nitrogen and carbon and oxygen. Like oxygen was Amun, the hidden, because you can't see oxygen. You understand? So all the way up to the 99, we had 99 natural elements that made up this physical reality, that were the building blocks of this physical reality in terms of the principalities of Mother Nature, the laws of physics, the laws of nature that govern this physical realm, electromagnetics, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, attraction and repulsion, or what other people call gravity. Okay, and we didn't see them as separate parts. We didn't see them as like, okay, yeah, we're just gonna send salutes to atom, and we're not gonna honor no more of these 98 different principalities. We're just gonna base off this one principle, hydrogen. We didn't do that. We didn't separate it. Everything was, as I said, we were a holistic people with a holistic mind. So we saw everything as a unified whole. Like I was speaking in a couple lives ago, speaking about how there's 1,000,000,008,000,000 consciousnesses unified into this super consciousness, this unified super consciousness. Yeah, that's what you what we termed as the one mind, the consciousness that's behind all of physical creation. You understand? The one mind, yeah, which is a mental force, and it comes from the mental plane, and then it trickles down to the spiritual plane, and then from the spiritual plane you get this physical plane. You understand? But even beyond the one mind of the emerald tablets, Tahuti or Thoth uses another word and another idea. In the emerald tablets, it says as Ba Temta, which means the all. And then in Hebrew, you'd say it as El Kolum. But in ancient Kemetic, they said it as Pa Temta, yeah, which means the all. When you say the all, you mean everything in existence unified into one force, everything. So like how we was talking in the a couple lives ago about the cosmic egg, and how all matter was compressed into one ball of infinite density. It's sorry, zero density. Yeah, that ball of matter of zero density, the cosmic egg. Do you understand? That contained all of the elements that you can find in this physical creation, in this physical universe. So all of it together, yeah, everything together is what the ancestors termed the all. Today you'll hear people like David Icke and them saying the all that there is. They put that there is at the end. The all that there is. Yeah, but that's okay, because I was saying to somebody before, when you speak about this concept, this abstract concept of the all, yeah, you can't even say nothing after that, otherwise you limit it. The only thing you can say, this is what I've been saying to people, is the all is. That's it. Anything else, you're limiting it. Like when you say about yourself, I am. When you are the I am, you've got infinite potential. But if you say anything else after that I am, then you become what you're saying. So you're limiting the I am now. In the same way, when you're speaking about allness, yeah, because oneness is really allness, all parts of this unified whole, unified into one. Yeah, what the Muslims say as one of Allah's names, Al-Wahid, yeah, the one, which really means the unified one, yeah, or the unified whole. Anyway, so speaking about this abstract concept of the all, yeah, you can't take from the all, and you can't add to the all, because where you're going to take from? If I say everything in this physical universe or creation, there's nothing else for you to take and add to it, because it's the all, it's everything, nothing's left out. So where you're going to find something else other than everything? So you can't add to it, yeah, and you can't take away from it, yeah, because when you say the all, yeah, where are you going to take it from? And what, you know what I mean? What you're going to take? So you can't add to it, and you can't take from it. It's just the all. It's a quantum concept, how they say all things are joined in one consciousness, or whatever word they want to use in their science. And they talk about resonance, how one atom affected over here is affected over here, is affected over there. All atoms are affected the same just from affecting one atom. Everything is combined and connected in this allness, okay? So then from the mind, and that's why I say the universe is mental from the mind of the all. We're coming from the mind of a super consciousness. Everything that you see manifesting and going on in this physical creation, when we say it comes from an invisible place that they don't like to teach us in school, they don't want to speak about spirituality. But that invisible place, or that quantum place, is where the all exists, the realm of the all. Do you understand what I'm saying? And from, like I said previously, God, if you want to use that word, knows everything, but hasn't experienced everything. Do you get that? God knows everything, but God hasn't experienced everything. So now, in order for God to experience everything, God had to create a state to put them experiences in, yeah? And God had to become, or the all had to become less than itself, yeah, other than what it is.
Yesterday, food, yeah?
Yeah, Jazakallah. All, yeah. So all had to become other than itself. Yeah, meaning that now it has to become separate parts. Now it has to become, instead of all knowing, it has to become ignorant. Do you understand? So now a state has to be created, yeah, a separate state, yeah, that is, and like I said, you can't add to the all or take from the all. So notice how the all then created nothingness. That state of nothingness needed to be created to put something in. Do you understand that? So that state of nothingness was created by the all, yeah? So that creation or physical creation could manifest in that state of nothingness. And that state of nothingness is a state of ignorance, where once the all started creating, them creations would have to become aware of themselves again, because they're not the all no more. They're not all knowing. They're ignorant now. So now these ignorant parts have to go through ignorance, or have to go through growth, so that they can experience consciousness. So consciousness, awareness is consciousness in awareness of itself. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like when you look in the mirror and you become aware of yourself, you become aware of the fact that you're not your body, and that you're something that's watching your body, through your body, or driving your body. Do you see what I'm saying? So they all had to become separate parts other than itself. And this is where you get personification, because the 1,000,000,008,000,000 consciousnesses had to personify themselves into this realm in order to build it and to test run this realm. And that's where you get stories of the Neteru, gods, Anunnakis and stuff, where they actually was here in this realm experiencing it. Do you see what I'm saying? So the first beings to personify from this nothingness, yeah, because remember what we said in earlier lives, it's everything but nothing. A vacuum is not empty, but in our measurement, the way we measure things in this physical realm, them shits, whatever's in that vacuum is beyond the atom, so we can't see nothing, so therefore it's rendered as nothing. So for us it's nothing. But for beings who have access to beyond the atom and from Mother Nature, that's an infinite source of energy. You call it free energy or 0 point energy that comes from out of the vacuum with the quantum fluctuations, yeah? But anyway, that state had to be created. And once that state was created, Anu, the Most High out of these 1,000,000,008,000,000 minds, the Most High created the square, yeah, 490-degree angles. 4 times 94 is 360, and the circle, 360 degrees. So 4 times 90 square, that's 360 degrees, and a circle, 360 degrees. Together, 720 degrees. So you've got 360 degrees in the square that represents the physical plane, and you got the circle, yeah, a full subscribed circle, which comes out to be 360 degrees, which represents the spiritual plane. And when they was combined, they was combined into what we call today the atom, or the physical atom. The physical atom is a combination in sacred geometry of the square and the circle. And what the Most High Anu did is put the circle inside of the square. And because the circle is round, the force of the circle is exerting out in every direction. So the square is trying to contain it. So the circle is pushing outwards in every direction. The circle pushing outwards in every direction eventually couldn't be contained no more. And you get what Western science tries to call the Big Bang Theory. They say, bang, something just happened and a Big Bang just went off. We're saying that the circle was put inside of the square, and the square couldn't contain the force of the circle being exerted in every direction outwards, and the square exploded until it turned inside out. And when that happened, that was the birth of the first atom and the birth of the first dot from that black egg, which became later the first line, and then the line became the wall, angle, and then the angle became a wall, and all sacred geometry was formed. You understand what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to say is, we melanated people carbon beings that's born black from the egg, we were born in that first, what you call primary creation. We manifested from that great throne of wisdom by sound, vibration, and electric energy. positive and negative force. Sound being the positive, electric being the negative. We personified as what you call etherians or nine ether beings in the spiritual plane. Remember what we said in previous lives? Everything happens twice. First in the mental, spiritual realm, and then second on the physical realm. Just like if you want to do something, you think about it first. You have that thought, and once you have that thought, you end up manifesting that thought. Now all thoughts manifest. So it's the same when you're talking about this physical creation. Do you understand? So when the Most High created the circle and created the square, I want you to understand something. Time is cyclic. Do you understand? It's not linear. It doesn't come from past and go to present. It's cyclic because time really doesn't exist. It's a mental construct for us to chart ourselves and measure ourselves in this eternal now, in this infinity. So time is cyclic. It's to do with cycles. Do you understand what I'm saying? But when people say, okay, when was the first Big Bang? Nobody knows that but the Most High. Because like I said, there's more than one Big Bang. There wasn't just one Big Bang. And nobody can tell you which Big Bang was the first Big Bang. Because like I say, the Most High, he created the square and the circle. This is on the spiritual plane. Okay? He puts the circle inside the square. The square can't hold the circle because the circle's energy is pushing outward in every direction. Then you have a boom, an explosion, and an implosion. So it turns inside out. When it turned inside out, that's how you get the dynamics of atoms that make up the physical creation or physical existence, physical realm, whichever word you want to use. Now, the point I wanted to make was this. Only he who drew the circle knows where the circle started and where the circle ends. Because the circle ends where it begins. Like if I put my pen here and draw a circle, I'm going to end where I started. But only the being that created that circle knows where that circle starts and ends, unless you're a crap drawer and you've got that big dot right where you started. But you know what I'm getting at. So only Anu can tell you which Big Bang out of these innumerous Big Bangs. Because listen, when a sun dies, it ends in a Big Bang. When a black hole is created, it starts in a Big Bang. So Big Bangs are starting and ending shit. And the Big Bang that Mzungu science is talking about, when they're telling this in school and stuff, they're only talking about the Big Bang for this solar system. What they teach us, what, 9 planets? They've took one off, Pluto, so 8 planets. They're only talking about this sun, this moon, and its 8 planets. They're not even talking about different constellations. Do you understand? Because our ancestors already said there was a bigger sun here before this sun. This sun, it's not new, but this is not the first. This is not the first sun that this area. Let me put it like that. This area of the universe has had. We had a bigger sun that contained every one of these galaxies within the sun. And when the Big Bang happened, boom, and it's sorry, we had a big sun called Sol, and we had 19 planets around that sun, that massive sun. It was a super massive sun. Our sun's a pebble when you compare it to other suns. You understand? But this was a super massive sun called Sol, yeah, and it exploded when it was the time for that world to end. Yeah, it exploded, and the 19 planets that was around it, it whacked them. So that means it froze them off into space. Them 19 planets that was originally around that massive sun became your Orion, this one, the Milky Way, Andromeda, Arcturus. It became the 19 galaxies that we're familiar with on this side of the black hole. Do you understand what I'm saying? So before there was a bigger sun there. And just like you have us as human beings that live on the planet, you also have some suns that have beings that live on there. There might not be beings that like me and you in flesh and blood and bone, but there's definitely beings, consciousness, sentience that lives on certain one of these suns. And the sun that was here before this one, the supermassive one I'm telling you about, that had beings that lived on there. The king on that planet was called Sol. That's why the sun was called Sol. Yeah. And the queen, her name was Arina. Yeah. And that together, that sun was called Solarina. Sol for short. Solarina. Today they took Ina off and they give you the word solar. That's where the word solar comes from. Sol, arena. It's coming from this truth that I'm giving you that they don't teach us this in the curriculum. I know this because I know. Do you understand what I'm saying? So anyway, that's how you get physical creation from these numerous big bangs that are happening all over the cosmos, where something starts, something ends. Birth and death happen in the same time, but never in the same place. And it's a cycle. So where something's alive, that'll be dead soon. Where something's dead, there'll be life there soon. So there's a fluctuation of life and death. Just like here on Earth, when you see trees and plants being sprouted and then they die and stuff, and you get the winter season and the summer season, solstices and stuff. It's like that in the cosmos too. There's no great mystery. It's just like planting a seed. Life is like that because what plants the seed is consciousness. They don't cater for consciousness in their Western science. They don't. They only start speaking about it now, and they just touch the surface of it. But like I said, our science was holistic, so we understood that the first cause was consciousness, was this one mind. Do you understand? Which molds this one thing, which we want to call black matter or waveform energy or plasma. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we personified through sound and electric. Sound, vibration, and electric, to the point where our ancestors mastered sound so much that we use sound energy. We got the energy from the ether to utilize sound and vibration, and to the point where we could use sound and vibration to levitate stuff, to levitate ourselves, to levitate that 50-ton block and move it, fly it. You see it flying through the air and rest it down nicely over there. Yes, let me set it down here. Like we understood vibration, sound, the sacred Om, how to levitate ourself, our own body, by putting ourselves in this Merkaba energy of sound and stuff. Certain stones, demagnetizing stones and heavy weights and stuff. How you think we get to be master builders and build up all them temples and stuff? And like I explained before, everything to do with that circle and the square, the atoms, and then you smack atoms together and you get molecules. Do you understand what I'm saying? When you speed molecules up, they start separating and they get less dense because they're vibrating faster and faster and faster, to the point where they're vibrating too fast to take on this dense flesh and blood form. You can go like transcend this realm if you know how to speed up your vibration and you know the secrets between the three states, which is your solid, liquid, gas. And water is just a doorway between the both states. You understand? It's not solid or gas. It's like it's a bit of both. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's your gateway into the, because the gases gets you to the spiritual realm, because in a gas all the molecules are separated far and they're vibrating so fast that now it's become light and eerie. Whereas if you slow that vibration down, the slower and slower you slow the molecules down, they start contracting till they all clump together and contract, and now it's become solid. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you understand how to speed up your vibrations, you can do it with Hertz music, you can do it with meditation, you can do it with fasting. The word fasting is telling you fast. It's making your vibration faster. So it's making you lighter. That's why people say fasting is good for meditation and spiritual work, because just from fasting alone, you're making your molecules vibrate faster, because it's not got the digestion to think about and stuff. If you make your vibration faster, your molecules faster, you're going to start raising up out of this lonely dimension and accessing your astral self. Do you see what I'm saying? And these are the simple secrets they don't give us in school. They just keep us stuck on the matrix. Yeah? So that's why I always tell people reality is perception. It's what you're able to perceive. Do you understand? What's reality for you, even though it's reality, it may not be reality for someone else, because they can't perceive it. They can't register it. Do you understand? And also it's to do with the power of beliefs as well, because some people can believe in something that's totally false, like religion, but for them it's real. They might say, make any kind of excuse to justify why they think they're never going to leave the church or the mosque, because they had this experience and it was real. But every religious person can say that, from the Christian to the Jew to the Muslim, you know what I'm saying? From the white woman who seen Mary to the Muslim who Allah saved him from drink. You understand what I'm saying? Anyone can say that. It's what you believe. Whatever you believe, that's the reality you've cast yourself in and you've painted for yourself. Because your mind tells you that it's real. No matter how many people will counterclaim what you're saying and present you with the evidence to show you why for them it's false. People will still say for them it's real. So reality is your perception. It's a placebo thing. And that's proven in medicine when they can give you a placebo drug that you think is really the drug. And because you've told yourself the doctor gave you this cure, you think that the cure cured you. But you cured you. This is all a game. Do you see what I'm saying? Listen, I usually talk to myself on these lives, yeah, because I realize most of this information is way over people's head. So I don't get offended or wait for a crowd or nothing. I just go ahead and put the lives out and let people catch them at their own time, because I think, like, not to blow my own trumpet, but I think I'm years ahead of people. So the world is not even nearly catched up to what I'm trying to say right now. It might take them a couple years to get to the point to get to be able to take in this shit. So whoever's watching, like, I salute you, because even though I don't look for a crowd to start or whatever, I appreciate anyone who comes in when I'm just going on my normal tangents to get the message out and to live my purpose. For real. And bear with me, I'm going somewhere with this. I'm not just going to waffle on, yeah? I'm going somewhere with this. I got this shit laid out. You see what I'm saying? Well, I'm elaborating on certain points. And you know how Sagittarius is on now. We'll just go on tangents on certain points. So what I'm trying to say is, that's how we looked at spirituality. There was no dogma in it. You didn't have to do this or never do this. We would give it as advice. Say, listen, ancestors said not to do this, and you knew that shit was tried and tested. They weren't saying that just to start no new fucking trend or none of that crap there. They were saying, who is it? Empress Lotus. Yo, shout out Empress Lotus. Glad to have you. But yeah, we weren't just doing things for the sake of doing it. Do you understand what I'm saying? We was defining what this universe is for ourselves and recording it so that our children, our descendants, could take from the work that we put in and add on to it, to a point where it's so old, it was already perfected, justified. You could literally say we spoke about everything in this physical and spiritual dimension. We've gone so far in defining this reality that we was already deep into quantum physics 5,000-10,000 years ago. They've found doggone information and Maori traditions and information and Kemetian and Kushite information, which verifies, yo, these lots were talking about some abstract shit. They was already talking about the 11 strings in this dimension, the Dogon, and talking about quarks. We've only found quarks, let's say in the last 20 years. Scientists have said, yo, there's something smaller than the atom. The electrons that go around the atom, the electrons, they're made of something smaller called quarks. Yeah? And our scientists, in this, when I say our scientists, I'm talking about our time, our generation, the modern Western world, Mzungu science, they identified 20 quarks that they just found out about. The doggone scientists, they speak about 266 quarks, different types of quarks. And let me just put it in your head for a minute. You see, when you go in the quantum realm and it defies the laws of nature, the laws of physics, it's not like here, how we have gravity and the law of thermodynamics and all of that kind of crap. When you go beyond the atom, everything goes to its own beat. Things are different. What they found is they've got certain quarks that the term they use is spin, and they say one spin. That means if you spin this quark around, you only have to spin it once all the way around for it to face back. That's like me spinning around in this chair, and I spin around one time and then you're back at my face. Yeah, there's certain quarks that have free spin. That means you have to spin that bitch around 3 times before it comes back to its normal face. Do you understand that? So that's like me spinning round, and then when I come back round, you can't see my face. And so I spin again, and you still can't see my face. And then I spin again one more time, and now you can see my face. Do you understand? So there's certain particles in the subatomic realm. That shit don't even work like on this side of the mirror. You have to spin certain quarks round 3 times. It's got free spin. Yeah? 3 times before you even see the same face again. Do you understand? So they're like, hold on. Okay, now we're making a new science, quantum mechanics, subatomic science. That's what it's about. Most of us, that goes over our head when we see these things on the news and stuff, or when we read about this stuff. We don't understand how that ties into what our ancestors saying about, okay, there's a spiritual dimension, there's life after death, existence and life is different. Existence comes before life. Things exist beyond the atom. When you say something, you're saying the sum, the mathematical sum of that thing, its weight, its height, its longevity, its nature, its density, its temperature, its speed, its diet, its preferences, its habits. All of them things add up, yeah, to a mathematical sum. And now that becomes a sum thing. Do you understand? But on the other side of the atom, things exist where we don't even know the sum for it. So you can't even say, yo, something exists beyond the atom. You can just say, yo, things exist. Because that sum, you can't weigh it, you can't see it, you can't hear it, you can't measure it. None of that shit. We don't have the capacity to register none of that shit there with our little bandwidth of hearing, seeing, smelling. That's like 0.005 of the electromagnetic spectrum. Like I said before, the electromagnetic spectrum's only 10% of creation. Put it this way, electromagnetism is everything you can see. Everything you can see is part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And that only makes up from 1 to 10% of creation. How do they know? They have mathematical models. They use math to make a model of whatever theory that they're trying to present. So if they say, okay, now we can make a model of the universe because we know enough about all these little parts like gravity, electromagnetics, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, radiation. We know all these little stuff. So now we can make a model using maths. And the maths will tell us like if this thing works or not. Most people don't know that the standard model of cosmology, yeah, the standard model that they teach us in school, it only works in parts. Like if they tell you about gravity, okay, that sounds like sense. So that works. Or the second law of thermodynamics, which means that energy in the universe can't just go on forever. Wherever it's coming from, it's going to run out. A time's going to come where it runs out of energy. That's the second law of thermodynamics. So if you put your fire on, it's not going to burn forever. When whatever fuel it's using runs out, then that shit must run out. So that's one of the all these laws of the universe. They put it together into what's called the standard model of cosmology. And do you know, together it don't work. If you ask any scientist, they would admit, yeah, it don't work. It's flawed. It's a flawed model. Like it only works in parts. But they didn't tell us that in school. Well, you know all this shit we tell you about, like matter and all this stuff. It really don't make sense. It don't work. But we're gonna teach you it anyway, like it's real. Just like they do with religion. Like these things are joined at the hip. They're there to give you a false reality. So they've crippled us in science by giving us this false Big Bang theory that they can't even explain what did it start from. What's the ingredients for the Big Bang? It has to, if I want to cook a pot, I have to have ingredients to onions and garlic and black pepper and whatever just for the seasoning, and then your potatoes, your rice, you know what I'm saying, fish, whatever. You're gonna have to have something to cook a pot up. You can't just cook up a big bang out of nothing. Hold on, nothing exists, and then all of a sudden there's this massive Big Bang. Remember what I said? Bear with me. I'm going to turn it back to God soon, but I got to give you this so you can make the link. Do you understand? Connect the dots. Do you understand? But they're telling us that the Big Bang just happened. Action, reaction, cause and effect. You can go back to the theory of everything live and hear what we had to say about that, because we broke that down to the atom. You understand what I'm saying? And shout out to everyone who gave feedback for that live, because that was a real deep live. But anyway, they gave us all these false theories that don't work. The standard model of cosmology does not work. The law of relativity, Einstein, they're telling you he's this brain box. That shit was flawed. That's a flawed concept. Darwinism's false. That's a flawed concept. So all these guys they're getting us to look up to, like these guys are some brain boxes. Okay, yeah, relativity and all of this shit. EM equals MC square. They don't even know. They're doing guesswork, man. They're giving you nursery science, just like they're doing in religion, giving you like 10% of your truth from the Nile Valley and then washing it in this dogma and all this stuff. That's just, yo, let me go on, yeah? That's where we was before all this religious shit started. We were alchemists, cosmologists, atomic theorists, physicists, astronomers, geneticists, physicians, doctors. Do you understand? We were so, well, yo, when they tell you how the ancestors were slaves, we weren't no slaves. We knew more than these people knew. But we allowed that to get stripped from us and be given these little books of religion. Yeah. We was there, man. We didn't have a dogma. We didn't have a dogma. So we in every nome, in let's take the Nile Valley, Kemet. In every nome there was a different deity over that nome. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if I'm from Hermopolis, my deity in Hermopolis is Tahuti. If I went to Memphis, yeah, I've left Hermopolis and I've gone to Memphis. This is the same Egypt. These man here, they ain't got Tahuti. They've got Ptah, the god Ptah, and they're gonna tell me about Memphite theology and stuff. If I go to Anu, which is what they call Heliopolis, they're gonna tell me about Atum, Anu, the high god in heaven and stuff like that. If I go to Karnak, deep down in the south, they're gonna tell me about Amun. Do you understand? Who comes from the Sudan and say, yo, Amun's the king of the gods. He's this, so we never used to argue about shit like that. We didn't have to have the Amun version of the Book of the Dead and the Tahuti version of the Book of the Dead and the Anu version of the Book of the Dead and the Osiris or the Isis version of the Book of the Dead. We just had the Book of the Coming Forth by Day. One. It didn't need to be revised. It didn't need to be updated. It didn't need punctuation added to it so that people could understand it. Do you understand? That was our vibe. We was holistic. So we would say, okay, wicked. Tahuti down there, Osiris up there, Ptah here, Amun-Ra there, and it's a unified whole. Just like we knew all the elements on the periodic table was a unified whole. So all these netches were unified wholes, and they had roles assigned to them. So you could in Hermopolis there would have been a lot of scribes because Tahuti was the god of scribes. In Memphis there would have been a lot of builders or masons because Ptah was the god of masonry and architecture and stuff. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yo, so we had a holistic view of reality because our theory was the theory of everything. That's why I'm telling you about the all, or the all that there is, allness. That means it incorporated Big Bang theory at some point. It incorporated string theory at some point. It incorporated what they call torsion theory at some point. All of these theories were happening at the same time, but not in the same place. It's all unified as a whole. That's why now you got Richard Hawkins and them talking about, well, before he died, rest in peace, Richard Hawkins. They were talking about how they're looking for the theory of everything. Do you understand? They're trying to get what our ancestors already have. But because they're starting from this side of the mirror, on the physical reality, and they refuse for so long to understand, hold on, there's a spiritual plane, you know. When you go beyond the atom, that is the spiritual world. Our ancestors have been in the connection with the spiritual plane from the dawn of time, because consciousness exists there. It doesn't exist in the form we exist here as humans with flesh, blood, heart, body, but an equivalent of it does, because for every physical thing, you have a spiritual counterpart. So if over here on this side of the mirror you got a cat, you best believe on that side of the mirror there's something that's equivalent to that cat, and there's something that's equivalent to that tree, and there's something that's equivalent to what's called the electron. Yeah, you might have something over here called a fermion or a boson, and it's the same thing. But how this is made out of matter, on this side it's made out of the dark matter or the plasma or the antimatter. Do you understand what I'm saying? But it's the same equivalent. So just like you have a physical you, there's a spiritual you on the other side of the atom too, on the other side of the mirror. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So now what you had is when the archons came and they invented their man, grafted their man. When you go to the Genesis 3:1, and it's talking about and the being that you want to call God is saying he's going to put enmity between her seed, Eve's seed, and his seed, the serpent, the devil's seed. So God's there. This is Genesis 3:1 to 3:15. Please read it if you have to. God is speaking to Eve and the serpent. And God ends up saying, listen, I'm going to put enmity between your seed and your seed, or her seed and the serpent's seed. So the serpent has a seed. Do you understand what I'm saying? The serpent had a seed. So the serpent seed is the birth of what we're calling the Muzungu, yeah, or the Tamahu. Do you understand what I'm saying? The Tamahu or the Muzungu is the serpent seed. So when you go to Genesis 3:1, yeah, it's telling you about the serpent seed, the Muzungu that came out of Canaan or came out of the Phoenicians. So that leprosy first came out of the black-skinned Phoenicians. So when you go to the Bible and you read in your Genesis, it's telling you about what was happening in Canaan or Phoenicia. So this group of Canaanites now, who is Noah's son Ham, and Ham's son, yeah, which is Ham had Cush, Phut, Mitzrayim, and Canaan, right? And Canaan was his fourth son. So now it's telling you about this fourth son was the first person to get these genes or this leprosy and this albinism. And this became a certain seed. That's why the whole of Leviticus is about this curse. You understand? Or this curse seed. Genesis 9:25 says, curse be Canaan. Yeah? It's telling you about this curse seed. You understand what I'm saying? This curse seed that came out of the caves, mixing with the original cave people, or the Hulub, the original caveman, who weren't even a Homo sapien. So these albino people mix with these cave people, and that's why you get today what's called Muzungu. This serpent seed that came out of the caves, mixing with the cave people, with the cave culture, they kept invading our lands. They kept invading our kingdoms. They lived on the fringes of all of our empires. All of our great nations was like attracted what you call barbarians, people who don't know about civilization or abundance or alchemy. So every time there was a great civilization, like you're talking Kemet or Sumer or the Mayans, yeah, Teotihuacan, Olmecs, whatever, there was what you call barbarians looking for an opportunity to run up in there and smash up everything. Do you get me? In history, they like to cover it over because they like to tell us that the Muzungu people are Homo sapiens, and they're not. The Muzungu people are not full Homo sapiens. They're only half Homo sapiens, yeah? So that's why they look like the way they do. They look like Neanderthals, right? If you take a normal modern Muzungu today and leave him unshaven for just something like 2-3 months, he will end up overgrown looking like a caveman, because that's where his genetics come from. Do you see what I'm saying? So in history, they like to, when they use the word barbarian, they like to use it like it's just loose, like anybody, like the barbarians around Rome, yeah. So they like to take themselves away from the word barbarian and say, okay, Greece and Rome and stuff was civilized, which is only a half truth, because let me tell you, those were black civilizations, and the beast that came from out the mountains that was attracted to our trade and our ease of living and looked standard of life and stuff, when they took over, do you understand? When they took over and they became Greece and Rome, they don't tell you that that culture was inherited or usurped or taken from black cultures in the Mediterranean, your black-skinned Phoenicians and your Garamantes and your Pelasgians and your, you understand, Mycenaeans. Those were black folk. It was not like their thesauruses and Oxford dictionaries trying to tell you it's a bunch of white people. They didn't come up in there till like the 1500s BC as the Dorians. They invaded Greece and took Greek culture over from the Etruscans and the real Pelasgians and the Phoenicians and stuff. Nile people, not no fucking, sorry for my language. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that happened at the same time that the Hyksos thing was happening in Kemet, because that was the same group of people. The Hyksos and the Dorians is the same root. It's the same genetic root. Just like Hebrews. The real Hebrews was them, Hyksos. Arabs, you call them today. Because they kept running up in Kemet, the Indo-Aryans, you're talking about these same Muzungu people and the Asiatics, yeah? People mixed with Asiatics and different mixtures of Semitic people. They kept running up in Kemet and trying to fight us. And people often ask, how did we get here? Like, how did we end up in the way that we did? But it wasn't through war. Let me put it that way. Because when you check history, real history that you can tangibly confirm inside and outside of the place where this event or person was supposed to have happened, if they're real, you're supposed to be able to confirm them outside of the Bible. Like, if all these biblical characters are real, put the Bible aside and Christianity or Judaism and go and find these people in history, like in history and in the real world. And none of them characters have ever been found. People like to make dumb arguments, like they say, okay, they'll find an Abraham. You know, there's more than one person named your name or Abraham. And any old Abraham they find, that's the Abraham from the Bible. Yeah, they come up with that crap. But none of them characters that they've ever tried that with have stuck. They've always had to admit, okay, that's not the real Abraham. I'm just using Abraham as an example. But none of them characters have ever been found. Do you understand what I'm saying? None of them. But what I'm saying to you is, when they kept invading Kemet and Atlantis, America, the Yucatan, and because it happened in China too. The first two dynasties in China was the Xia dynasty, Xia, Shi. It's spelled Xia, but you say it as Shi. Yeah, the Shi dynasty was the first dynasty in China, which was a black dynasty. And then after them came the Shang. And the Shang, the first half of the Shang dynasty in the whole confederation was black people. And then when the Muzungu came out the mountains, you got to understand there was different tribes of them. Canaan had 11 sons, so you get different tribes of these Muzungu. Like you get Hittites who came out of the son Heth, and that means terrible ones. They're even terrible to their own kind. They was terrorizing the other white people and shit. They was called Hittites. So when you go into Egyptian history, you read about, okay, Ramesses the Great and how the Hittites wanted to come to Egypt and kick some ass. So that Pharaoh Ramesses, he had to man up and, yo, we're going to go out there and meet them, in Israel. We're not going to let them come to Kemet. We're going to go out there and confront, man. And they clashed in where it's called Kadesh. That's one of the most famous battles in history. I have it written down in my book, Treasures in the Sand. Yeah, we're talking circa 1279 BC. If not 1279, 1274, somewhere around that time BC. Ramesses the Great, only 8 years in. His man them are telling him about the threat. Like, these Muzungu man from up north, he's coming down. They're tearing down all of our colonies because we got friends out there. Obviously, all that's our turf. They're coming from Turkey and they're just coming cleaning up everyone. You understand what I'm saying? So when all that started to happen and that started to get peak at the end of the 6th dynasty, yeah, going up to the 11th dynasty with Mentuhotep. So you're talking, Mentuhotep came on the throne about 2055 BC. Some say 2040 BC. Yeah, it was getting peak, and then it started getting peak again after the 12th dynasty. So when we came back on the throne, it only lasted 2 dynasties, then it's gone peak again. You get what's called this Hyksos group invading the Nile Delta, meaning just the top part of Egypt, the delta bit. They They had one area there, and from that one area, so much disease and plague spread that was killing the people, yeah, that we had to get rid of them, yeah, and but they stayed there for 100 years. Do you understand? And if you go back to the pharaoh of that time, is Plaque, is Steely, he calls them Arabs. Do you understand what I'm saying? He says they're Arabs. Yeah, this is the same Hyksos people. Do you understand? And then after them Hyksos people, after we kicked them out, that was the real Exodus. We kicked them out. Yeah, the Pharaoh never held them in no captivity and slavery and shit. Them man there took advantage of our humanity. The fact that we let them live in the Delta because they never had no land and they didn't know how to grow their own food. We let them keep their livestock in their shepherd business. Yeah, and we called them the shepherd kings. Yeah, and we let them live there. And when they built up enough strength and we started fighting each other like black people do, we started arguing and fighting and shit. They took advantage and took control of that one area that they was in. Yeah, and tried to get bold and come further and further south. And after 100 years, we kicked their ass out back into Canaan. That's what they reverse into this Exodus story for you, because the name of them two pharaohs who initiated and finished that was two brothers. One was called Kamoses, the last pharaoh of the 17th dynasty, and his younger brother was called Ahmoses. If you take the Ka, spirit, and the life, you're just left with Moses. So they just squashed down that with the next Moseses, took Moses the first, took Moses the second, took Moses the third, along with Kamoses and Amoses, five Moseses. You just squash them all together, sprinkle it with a bit of Greek dust, yeah, sprinkle it with a bit of Habiru Greek dust, yeah, and yo, Moses, but we ain't never found no Moses. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's for real. When all of this started going on, when different people started invading Ganawa, Alkebulan, yeah, what we call Africa, we found the best thing we could do was civilize them, which was a mistake, big mistake. We said, yo, these people are so barbaric and they're so envy our civilization. Let's teach them how to have their own effing civilization. Let's teach them how to count. Let's give them a language. Let's teach them geometry. We're not going to teach them too much, but let's teach them enough to take them out of that jahiliya, which is Arabic for ignorance. Let's take them out of that ignorance and teach them something so that they could run their own kingdoms, basically. And that's what we did. We created your Judaism. We created your Christianity. We created your Islam. We had and have black Israelites, the real Israelites, who was the ones who came up with the doctrine. Well, it was written by Tahuti and it was given to Pharaoh Tutmosis the first, Moses, on Mount Sinai. You understand? And they changed it into some white guy with a beard. Yeah, it weren't a Pharaoh. That's they're telling you Pharaoh stories. Do you understand? That's one of the Moseses, because there was five characters that they squashed into one to give you that story of Moses. They used the lives out of these various different real characters. I gave you the first two, Pharaoh Amos, his brother, and then you have Tutmos, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, them five pharaohs, they squash it down into your story of Moses. And they use bits and pieces from each one of these guys' stories, like Pharaoh Tutmosis the first. Tut means fourth. In our language, it's really Jehutimos, yeah, which means child of Tahuti. So these men were, their patron god was Tahuti. So Tahuti gave them the scrolls, yeah, of the Torah to say, you man in Canaan and stuff, so you don't fall off and so you don't fall away completely from the mysteries. Give your people this. Because remember, there's black people in the Israel and all the way in Anatolia, Turkey and stuff, India, China, and we were falling away from our stuff, coming into contact with all these different beings. So we had to be given texts to give out in the region to maintain a certain kind of consciousness, a certain kind of civilization. So your Judaism, your Christianity, your Islam was first made to make people better, to civilize these barbarians around us when we was out there in the field. Back home, we've got all our stuff. We've got our Medunecha. We've got our spirituality. We're never going to go away from that. You're going to have to come and kill us in the Nile Valley for us to fall away from that. Do you understand what I'm saying? But when we're all our people out there in the buffer zones and stuff, when they're coming into contact with different people and different customs and different traditions and different gods and different religions and different philosophies. We had to maintain a certain kind of equilibrium. Do you understand? Because remember, it's like America today is the main powerhouse. They feel like they have to interfere in everyone's business. It's like that. We had to do the same because we was being invaded all the time. We had these large groups ganging up and saying, yo, let's run up on Egypt because they're all up in that spirituality, Ma'at shit. They probably in the temple praying now. Let's go and kick their ass and steal some of that gold. We was that dude where at times we got too spiritual, like in the time of Akhenaten. We got too religious, too spiritual, where we not thinking about God in our land. We're not talking about feeding and maintaining the army. We're just talking about all this sun shit, like this atom this and atom that. You got to see it from a human perspective too. Like I said, we're a holistic people. So a lot of people felt like that at times, even in Kemet, where they turn on the Pharaoh, like, hold on, you're endangering, man. But anyway, we gave them religions to civilize them. And I'm talking about non-Africans. Speech. They didn't have a language. They had grunt sounds like the cave people, grunting. And you hear people like Boris Johnson doing it. Like when they stumble, they go, like they make this messed up sound, man. He did it the other day. Obviously, we know it's a clone, but he did it. He's scuffling papers and he can't seem to find himself. He's just giving this speech and all you can hear is papers and he's like, forgive me, forgive me. And you see they go into that grunt, that kind of like natural default grunt sound. We gave them speech, we gave them mathematics, we gave them chemistry, we gave them fucking medicine, we gave them hygiene, we gave them all of that stuff. We teach them how to walk on 2 feet, we teach them how to cook their meat. Do you understand what I'm saying? That when they teach us in history about hunter-gatherers, oh, well, humans were hunter-gatherers. They're talking about them. We weren't never no hunter-gatherers. They're talking about cave people, Neanderthal cave people that came out of the cave culture that has just started planting crop. And they want to say that crop started in Turkey in this and that mountains. Where did they say? Can't remember if it's the Khyber Pass or whatever, but they're trying to say, so they're saying it like we never planted none, but if we're the first people on earth, then obviously we already had agriculture and we knew how to plant food and we're alchemists, we'll grow food in the damn desert. Do you understand what I'm saying? But they tell us about all this hunter-gatherer shit, and before Göbekli Tepe, 2500 BC, man was hunter-gatherers. We're not, how can anyone who build Göbekli Tepe, because we were still like basically Neanderthals. And that links into the story of Prometheus, yeah, when they tell you that Prometheus taught the people, humans, how to use fire. And for that, the gods like punished him because he weren't supposed to show the humans how to use fire. That's a power that he gave them. That's talking about a black guy, because you know the Greek gods were black people, right? And so one of these guys taught these Mzungu folk how to use fire in a certain kind of way where he shouldn't have taught them, and he got dealt with for that, yeah. But that's around the time of the Iron Age when we started teaching them, among other things, like I said, religion and speech, and that we started teaching them agriculture, trade, law, navigation on ships and stuff. Yeah, that was the Phoenicians who taught the Argonauts, and the Phoenicians is the first Greeks, and so they ran the trade. They had trade after the old Kushite Empire, Old Man Kush. After that fell, the Phoenicians took over as the seafarers, and then after the Phoenicians fell, the Greeks and the Romans took over that shit. And then after Rome fell, the Vikings in Europe, they took over that shit and started reaching America and stuff. But all that comes from us. We taught them that stuff there. Do you understand? So the word God comes from the word Guten. It's an old Germanic Nordic word. Guten, some people say as gut, some people say as wut or wutan. And today in modern language, we say as Odin, yeah, the father of four. Yeah, that's where the word God comes from, gut or gutan, and it means to invoke. Do you understand what I'm saying? And like I said, that comes from the 12th century. So before the 12th century, there wasn't even that concept. This concept that we use today, like globally, God, that's a 12th century Germanic Nordic concept. that didn't even have no basis in the Holy Scriptures or nothing. Yeah. And so you get Judaism, that story in the Bible talking about Moses and the Exodus, and God said, "Let my people go," and He killed all the firstborns. That's a mishmash story of truth and falsehood. It's like half truths, because the real story is they came to that part of Egypt, and they ended up staying in that Egypt in that part for 400 years. But for the last 100 years, yeah, from 1480 to 1580 BC, so from 1580 to 1480, from 1680 to 1580 BC, these man ruled there, and they made a hybrid culture where they ruled there as the pharaoh. There's like, well, we don't recognize no pharaoh, we're ruling our own shit. And if you check the history, all of them have got Jewish names, like names that Jews have today, like Jacob's son, Jacob's son, and all that kind of crap. They was having them names. They're literally, and like the authors of the Torah and stuff, if you compare the names to these Hyksos characters, it's like, hold on, this is similar, these names here. He's talking about your same genetic root of people. And that was from 1780, 1786, after the reign of the first queen, who no one really talks about, Queen Sobek Neferu, rest in peace, justified through her voice. And she ended in 1786, the 13th dynasty, yeah, which was a weak dynasty, but she made her name known, yeah. And then from 1786, after Queen Sobek Neferu, these Hyksos was dwelling in the area till 1580. Some people say 1550 BC. So you're talking 400 years. These men are in that Nile Delta. Yeah, and then when we threw them out, later on, that story became the mythological story of the Exodus. We had to throw them out because they tried to take shit over. And you can research Pharaoh, second Enretau, the martyr, and his two sons, Pharaoh Kamoses, the first Moses, and Pharaoh Ahmoses, his younger brother, the second Moses. And then the three other Moses took Moses 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. So Christianity was a Greco-Roman thing. And you have to understand the Hyksos, the Habiru, they're Greeks, they're Hellenics. Them people there are Canaanites that just came over into the Mediterranean, because the Mediterranean is right. Canaan is a Mediterranean nation. Do you understand what I'm saying? Phoenicia and all of that is a Mediterranean nation. They're the eastmost out of the Mediterranean nations, isn't it? So them guys there are Canaanites. But when you get to Christianity and the Romans, they're Esau's children. If you want to study Esau, read Genesis 23 to 28. But 24:3 is significant, because that's when Jacob and Esau get told not to mix with these cursed Canaanites. Yo, don't mix your seed with these people, they're cursed. Something's going on here. So that's what Isaac, their dad, the prophet, is meant to have said to them. This is Genesis 24:3. And then when you get down to Genesis 28:1, Jacob is now telling his sons as law. It's now become law in Israel that, yo, we can't mix with them people there, you know. Them people there is like an ungodly bunch. They're cursed. It's that deep. That's how deep it is. That's why when people try and go on like the Bible, God loves everyone and shit, God's telling these people not to mix with that people. Obviously, God's not all loving. God don't love everyone. That's according to the Bible. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then when you get to Islam now, you're talking about the Semitic Seljuk Turks, Ottoman Turks, and the Semitic Arabs, yeah, who were Turks, came down from Turkey, and they came through the Altai Mountains. Yeah, they're the groups of steeps people or cave people who came from the Altai Mountains. Like, they're not the original Assyrians when you speak about Assyria. Yeah, in its early days, they're the later Assyrians when Assyria turned into this warmongering nation. That's them. That's all that they was on the war thing. So, and that happened in the 7th century AD. The Christianity thing, we all know, they made that military campaign into Africa and Asia, and starting in 325 AD with the Council of Nicaea under Constantine, who created that Jesus myth. And they created that from the previous Greeks, who had already invented that character under the name Serapis. So the Romans just used Serapis under another name. They renamed him Jesus. His name was Caesar Borgias, but they renamed him Jesus when they came up with this Christianity stuff. And that's significant because that Serapis was already planted in Nile Valley culture. You know how we, as black people, the most religious people, and like I said, we didn't really deal with dogma. So if we had a trade with you or we came into contact with you, we would actually allow you to recognize your God, even among us. Came to Egypt, if we accepted you in any kind of way, you could add your God to the pantheon. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we didn't see nobody as having an exclusivity on God. So when you get to the Egyptian, when you do your Egyptian research, you'll see that in many different dynasties, there's new gods added to the dynasty, and they'll tell you, oh, this is an Assyrian god, or this is an Arab god. And we respected them. It was like, okay, that's your God. Do you understand? So they used that as a weakness to plant this Serapis among us. So when you go into what I call Hellenic Egypt, they say Egypt. Egypt is a Hellenic Dorian Greek thing, Macedonian Dorian Greek thing, yeah? So Egypt isn't what I call Kemet. Kemet is Kemet, the capital or the land of the black community. That's what it means in real Cushitic language breakdown. It doesn't mean the black land or the land of the blacks, and it's named after the soil. It means the black community, yeah, because it was a community of black tribes and nations from all over the motherland that came to know Egypt as the capital, the new capital, because the old capital was Kush. And then when the old capital fell, not from any war or anything, but that's how old it was, that it became so old that now there's a new capital. Is the people have moved up north, followed the Nile and stuff, because the Nile shifts and that. And they've camped out in Kemet, the main group. So now Kemet is surpassed Tarseti, because Tarseti is like an old man with a walking stick now, Kush. So Kush went down in history as that was the first. Do you understand? And then Egypt surpassed its mother, you understand, in its own time. Do you understand? But there's so many unknown things about Kush because it goes so far back into time that it's like when they talk about the sea, when it's saying, we know more about space than we know about the sea. That's like Egypt and Kush. We know about Egypt is space. Yeah, we know stuff about Egypt, even though we don't know everything. We know way more about Egypt than we do about Kush. Do you understand? And why the pharaohs kept marrying down south, kept going back down to Kush to get their wives. There was a reason for that. And they carried that into the Bible with Moses, saying that Moses married an Ethiopian woman. And who was it? His sister Miriam, because Moses had a sister in their story called Mary as well. And she laughed at Moses because he married an Ethiopian. This is what the Bible is saying, the Bigot book. Yeah. So because Mary laughed at Moses, yeah, for marrying an Ethiopian woman, yeah, and remember, make note that in that time, there's nothing discriminatory about Ethiopia. Back in them days, Ethiopia was Kush. That place shits on Israel or whatever little camp they've got in the wilderness. This is an empire. But the white racists who wrote the Bible today want to give you that twist. Oh, so she laughed. But in the story, God now is meant to have punished her. How did he punish her? He punished her by turning her into a leper. That means making her skin white. Do you understand? One of the numerous times where God punishes someone in the Bible by giving them leprosy, by taking away their melanin, which is the ancient curse, Genesis 9:25. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that there you have them 3 degrees. You have your Judaism with the Hyksos and the Habiru Hyksos, or who's called in other terms Kushashu. And that's where you get your Ashkenazim, your Sephardim, your Hasidic Jews. You get that group called the Khazars, who sometimes they come under the banner of Islam and sometimes they come under the banner of Judaism. It's the same people. Do you understand? And the Palestinians, I'll get to them, yeah, because they see after them Hyksos, when Ramesses kicked their ass and killed them off with the force of the sun, yeah, in the Battle of Kadesh, and they want to say, oh, it was a draw, the battle was a draw, but they never came in trouble with Egypt again, did they? Never again, yeah, even when we was in their area, yeah. So the Sea people, they are another group who came after the Hyksos. So after the Hyksos came in between the When Egypt fell into an intermediate period for the second time, that was at the end of the 13th dynasty, and that lasted all the way to the end of the 17th dynasty with Pharaoh Kamoses. But he kicked their ass before he died, yeah. But he didn't live to see the victory where we would push him out of Egypt. His brother Amosis did that, yeah, and he did that in 1580 BC. Some say 1550 BC, and chased them way back into Canaan, where they became today's what you call Jews, or fucking, sorry about the swearing, Hasidic Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Israelis, yeah, all them bunch there, them Jebusites, and them Edomites, yeah, Esau's children and stuff. That's where they come from, the Hyksos time and shit. Not that, that's where they make their stamp on us, where they gave us that first religion of theirs, reversed that shit on us and gave it to us. Do you understand? It comes from them, yeah. And then with the Christianity, that comes from Constantine and them in their Council of Nicaea and all the other councils that they had to rid the world of the presence of the black presence, global melanated presence. They wanted to get rid of it anywhere where they found it and replace it with a more westernized European Greek looking pantheon with men without beards that look like women and shit. They came with all of that, yeah, the spell of the ghost that came from Alexander the Greek, and they created that Jesus character just by adapting Serapis, what the Greeks were already using. They was already using that shit under Alexander the Greek and his Ptolemies. So what Constantine did is just reinforce that and rebrand it, repackage it. Now it's not Serapis or Caesar Borgias. Now this shit's Jesus, the Christ, mate. So this was a spiritual weapon that they put us under, yeah. And when that started to break down, because we're resilient, man, this shit only works for a certain time on this. It's cyclic time. So it breaks down like what's happening now. So they rekindled it again and come with this Islam shit, yeah, this Mohammedism shit, these Semitic, Seljuk, Ottoman Turks, yeah, Arabs, yeah, what you call Semitic Arabs, and in the 7th century AD, coming down from Turkey and stuff, they was the ones that the real prophet Mustafa Muhammad al-Amin, 570 to 632 AD, he was fighting against them. Do you understand? And also remember that they had hostile groups of our own people, like the Kerma Kingdom. Kerma Kingdom was in Kush, but it was like it's not Merowe and Napata. Merowe and Napata is always like a part of Kemet. Kemet ruled over Merowe and Napata. It's like Egypt's portion of Kush, northern Kush, yeah, near Gebel Barkel and stuff, yeah. And then you have Kerma Kingdom, yeah. Kerma Kingdom was always at odds. That's another group of Kushites. It's like you got Crips and Bloods. Not because they're both black means they get on. Like, so we had that going on in Kush, where you had Kerma Kingdom, which saw themselves as older than Merowe and Napata, and they seen themselves as the real shit. And they had already traveled like outside of Africa too, like into the Indus Valley and stuff, where they were called Kashi and Heka Kasu before we gave that name to Hyksos and stuff, yeah. And they were a disagreeable group when it comes to our ancestors in Merowe and Napata. They just didn't get along, man. It was a very hostile relationship that we had with them. And a lot of the scholars, so-called scholars in Egyptology, they try and use that as an excuse to try and say that Egyptians weren't black. But it's got nothing to do with race. That's like saying when Scotland goes to war with England, both of them ain't white. Do you understand what I'm saying? If William Wallace of Scotland, Braveheart, was fighting with the King of England, it doesn't matter, they're not both from the same genetic root. This is a tribal, location, territorial thing. We're Scottish because we live up here, and you're English because you live down there. So it's the same thing we had, just like we still have with Crips and Bloods and Burgers and Johnnies here in England, and Hutus and Tutsis in Africa, and you know what I'm saying. So the Kerma Kingdom were different. They're what you call C group in scholars call C group Kushites, whereas the Egyptians, Kemetians, yeah, and Tarsetians, they come from the A group Kushites, and you understand came through Kustul and stuff. So you have them 3 degrees: your Judaism, your Christism, and your Mohammedism. They're all 3 types of isms, yeah? What they call Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, yeah? And they kept coming in waves. So the first time when we conflicted them and we tried to come up with, let's come up with religion and try and civilize them and teach them certain things and stuff, and that didn't work. And now they got worse because now they're smarter enemies. They know shit that we, you know what I mean? We fucking taught them, even if it was just 3 degrees. You understand what I'm saying? From them 3 degrees came your Judaism, your Christianity, and your Islam. 3 degrees out of 360 degrees, yeah? And so another time there came, what I was getting at is the sea peoples. They're what you call the Baltic states today. So you're talking like Romania, Lithuania, Kosovo, Czech Republic, Albania. What's the other ones? You know what I'm talking about. Them states there, along with other Nordic states and like Gauls from France, the France people, and Germanic people from Germany and Prussia and stuff. All of them, all of the white people, yeah, from Europe, the Muzungu, gathered up into one force. That history, they try to leave race out of it because history is very vague. They don't want to admit all the madness that Muzungu have done, so they stay away from race. It's very vague, but they give these names like, oh, the sea people. Scholars have been baffled about who these sea people were. We recorded it. Our ancestors recorded it. That's why it's so important to know the language and stuff, yeah, and put all the names down. The Azawa, yeah, them Anatolians, okay, yeah. It tells you about the Iranians, okay, people from Iran. Yo, it gives you the whole breakdown of these people, man. Yeah, Pharaoh Mernentar or Suten Mernentar, the son of Ramesses, he has a list where he lists all of them. Ramesses and Seti, father and son and grandson. Seti, Ramesses the second, yeah, and Mernentar. Them 3 have lists about these people because first they had to go and like had minor skirmishes with certain people and stuff, and it built it up into this great invasion where we was invaded from the sea. These people in bare boats and shit, man. They're coming and they're ripping down everything. They were worse than the Hyksos, the Hittites in Ramesses the second time. In fact, they finished the Hittites, and the Hittites weren't no joke. They finished the Hittites and everyone else that they came in contact with, and came down into Kemet, yeah, from east and west. They came from the east on boat, yeah, and they came from the west, teaming up with them Muzungu folk in Libya, and came through Libya, yeah, the Libyan desert from the west, and yo, we was fighting on 2 different fronts. And Pharaoh Merneptah, when he came on the throne, he was already 65 years old after his father Ramesses II reigned for so long. But their names are written down, yeah. And why I'm saying all this is because all these times that we was making contact with these other nations, just like their stuff is spraying off on us, and we're saying, "Yo, what kind of weird stuff is this?" Our stuff is spraying off on them, so they're taking certain teachings from Kemet and merging them into these hybrid cultures. So when they came up with these doctrines like Judaism and Christianity and Islam, they all have these elements within them, because that started happening from the 11th dynasty with Mentuhotep and them, where they was like, hold on, we're getting invaded all this time by all these people. We need to start thinking on a war footing. So they were more like imperial pharaohs. Yeah, it weren't an imperial age, but they started thinking very imperialistic, meaning like, yo, we're gonna go out there, kick some ass, and they're gonna have to pay us tribute. We're gonna make an army where all year round the army can be ready to go to war. They got weapons, they got wages, all that kind of stuff. That came in the Middle Kingdom with the Mentuhotep and the Amenemhets, and the because you have Amenemhet 1, 2, and 3, and you have Sesostris 1, 2, and 3. So them group of pharaohs, very, very strong, tough pharaohs that look like me and you, so they don't put them on display in the museum. They rather talk about King Tut and all them Phoenician looking man. Yeah, shout out to all of them anyway. But yeah, we started doing that. We started going around and saying, yo, the king, you're the king. You have to send your son to Egypt. You're the king, queen over there. Your firstborn, send him to Egypt. We was taking everyone's firstborn. and training them as an Egyptian, giving them civilization. And then after the dad's finished, okay, now your son's on the throne, wicked. Now he's one of us, because all he's ever knew is Kemet. He feels like he's a part of Kemet. That's why I was telling people sometimes it's beyond race, because it's the mind state. Yeah, do they have the nine even mind state, the black mind, or not? So we had certain people in the seats all around Kemet. We built it up to the point where that went so peak, we had to. Like when you get to Pharaohs like Pharaoh Tutmosis the third, that he never even spent no time on the throne. He was out in the field, 18 battles in a row, he won them all. Yeah, one of the main ones was called Armageddon, because it was like the end of the world for them, man. Do you understand? This is the 1500s when they first started coming down, these waves and waves of cave people coming out the mountains with their house and their whole car and family. Do you understand what I'm saying? So all of them contact times there, we was disseminating information, not only just to the people and come into contact with different cultures, but taking their sons and training them as a Kemetian in Kemetian spiritual customs, Kemetian history, in Kemetian rituals. So they felt like they had an obligation because they was part of Kemet. So we thought, whether it was for good or bad, that's the best way to deal with these Neanderthal man that keep coming in, because we didn't want to mix with them, our women. We was like, yo, we're never gonna send a black woman to one of these man. But to make a treaty, you know how niggas are horny, you can send your women. So we would have harems of these white women and stuff. Yeah, these Mzungu women. Yeah. But every time they requested for us to send one of our women, we wouldn't send one of our women, because there was a rule like, yo, our women can't be with no one but the God. Do you get me? So we never honored that part. And you can check that. Don't believe me. This is how we was rolling. You understand what I'm saying? Ramesses III was the last one to deal with these sea people, because they came back again. They came in the time of Mernetar, and Mernetar kicked their ass right after the reign of Ramesses the Great. And then they came again in the 1100s, about 100 years after, maybe 200 years after, I can't remember. They came in the reign of Ramesses the Third, who was another great, because he kicked their ass 5 different times. The time that they came, that time, they tried 5 different battles, yeah, over that 10-year span to fight my man. And he fought them and defeated them. But all them times we came into contact with these people since the time of Seti, and even before, since the time of the Tutmosis and Amos and Kamos, and then the Tutmosis and then Ramesses and stuff, people that we beat, we resettled them. We used some of them as mercenaries, saying, you know what, instead of killing all you 10,000 man, if you man want to like renounce your shit and live as like farmers and stuff, and then when wartime comes, we'll pay you. We'll pay you so you can have a decent existence. We weren't into no slavery and none of that. So Ramesses and them were making them mercenaries and using them to fight in the wars and stuff. Certain Hittites, certain sea peoples. A lot of people didn't like that, because at that point in the Kemetian army, they didn't have an army. They go on like how Saudi Arabia go on now. Saudi Arabia hires out other armies like the US Army and whoever else. Yo, we'll pay you to go on, and you just bring the man them in it. So this is how it was. With Kush. This is how it was with Kush, because in greetings Empress Lotus. Yeah, this is how it was in Kush. Kush had the army. They had the Medjay, or the Medjayu, the protectors, the elite armed forces. 4 out of 5 soldiers in the Egyptian army were Kushites from the south, Sudanese, Medjay. We were trained in martial arts and the whole shit. All of that came from us. Do you understand what I'm saying? But in the time of Ramesses, when they started making these Mzungu, they started making them like mercenaries and stuff. That number changed, and a lot of Kushites didn't like that. No longer was it every 4 in 5 was Kushites. Now the army was like half Mzungu. You understand what I'm saying? And a lot of them Kushites went back south and pledged themselves to the Sultan of Kush. Do you understand? That culminated in the 25th dynasty with Pharaoh Alara, Pharaoh Kashtar, Pharaoh Shabaka, Pharaoh Taharqa, that you read about in the second book of Kings, chapter 19, verse 9. as the right hand of God who was fighting against the Persians. You can find these men in real history. Do you understand what I'm saying? All these special characters they give you in the Bible, they didn't exist in that form. But the characters that are the other characters in the stories, they're real. They put them characters in there to make the Bible real. But the characters they're trying to make the star, like your Jesus or your Jonah or your Job and your Abraham, that's a composite character. That they're talking about one, two, three, four, sometimes five different personalities clashed together in one, who's a myth, and that's why they've never found none of these characters, and that's why you can't go to any museum and show me no Islam. You can't show me no Judaism, or you can't show me no Christianity. You're only going to be able to show the indigenous people's stuff, their culture, because the history of his story is culture. It's tangible. It's not up for debate. It's tangible, and it defies all of the conventional history that they've taught us in school. Their conventional history is a bunch of bullshit. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny. When you go back into your own indigenous cultures and your own creation myths, whether you want to call them myths or teachings, when you go back into your own stuff and scrutinize it against what we've got today, you'll come to a very deep realization that, hold on, our ancestors knew a lot more than we do. So all that stuff they teach us in school about primitive, we're the ones who are primitive, who have forgotten all of the technology, the free energy technology, time travel, teleportation. We've been in quarantine for the last 6,000 years. So we ain't even had much contact with higher beings, to the point where the modern world wasn't even ready to accept otherworldly beings till all of this UFO corona shit started going real peak. Let's say from 2015 coming to 2020 is the window where most people started turning like, hold on, this is beyond human stuff now going on. You understand? And then the scamdemic thing kind of topped it. Yeah? But listen, you understand? Let me finish this anyway, because I realize I'm taking up a lot of you lot's time, but I want you to get this down, man. I want you to get this down real quickly. Let me try and blast it, yeah? So yeah, they're the 3 degrees that we give to them. So religion just doesn't come from anywhere. Like the Muzungu just came and made up some shit. They don't make nothing. Do you understand? They usurp other people's shit and then adapt it. That's what the Alpha Draconians, yeah, the Archon, the Dracons, that's what they do. Yeah, so their children, Genesis 3:1 to 15, chapter 3, verse 1 to 15 is talking about Muzungu right there in your Bible, yeah? The serpent seed, yeah? They usurp other people's stuff and adapt it to their own benefit, and then use it like as a tricknology, like as a psychology shit, one of their 5 Ps. Do you understand? But Suten Taharkan, the 25th dynasty, after Ramesses III, they inherited the mantle for defending our ancestral home and our treasures in the sand. They was the ones who defended it, and they defended it against the Persians, yeah, and they defended it because after all of that sea people stuff, you got to understand this. Go and research this for yourself as well, yeah. When the sea people came and they brought the war into the Nile Valley, it weren't just Kemet. They brought the war into what's called today the Middle East, and they ripped down all of the nations that they came in contact with, coming all the way down to Egypt. So imagine the things that would have been being heard in Egypt. Yo, have you heard in Turkey? These men ripped down Turkey, you know, there's nothing left. Even the Hittites are dead. They wiped out the Hittites, yeah, who gave us all that trouble with Ramesses II. They finished the Hittites. The Hittites don't exist no more. You understand what kind of alarm bells that's ringing in our kingdoms, yeah? And they're coming closer to Kemet. And so Ramesses, you can read about it in my book, Treasures in the Sun. Yeah, Ramesses had to defend the kingdom against that when he had people plotting against him. He had this harem conspiracy. He had people trying to kill him. They had tombs being robbed because Egypt started breaking down in his time. He inherited a weak, mash up Egypt. And he's thinking about these people coming to mash it up even more. Oh man, that's why I say he's just as great as the great Ramesses II. Because the kind of Egypt he came into, and look, recently, you can check on Mr. Imhotep's page, yeah, they found on his mummy that his throat had been cut. So in the end, they eventually killed him, because in the harem conspiracy, most of the conspirators, he put them to death. But there must have been some that were still conspiring against him, because it's been confirmed that he actually died from having his throat cut. Rest in peace, justified truer voice, Ramesses the Third. Do you understand? So the sea people, he beat them 5 different times, man, on land and on sea, like in his reign, under all that pressure and shit, before they cut his throat. Yeah, Ramesses the Third. After him, after the 1100s, there was what's called a dark ages, because really and truly, that's World War Zero. That's what we say in my book. That's World War Zero. The whole Mzungu world, think about it, teamed up, all teamed up and said, yo, let's go and just run upon these people and just take their shit. They came and tried it and they got their ass kicked. Do you understand? And so in the time of after, for about 400 years, there's nothing really to report in history. It just goes blank. They call it the Dark Ages. They say the sea people put the lights out of the ancient world. The onlyest one of the mighty nations that was still standing was Kemet and Kush, because of Ramesses III, and he defended it. But that had taken so much out of us to beat them all them times when they invaded. It was like when you get poisoned and you know he's going to die. Even though he won the fight, he took too much poison. So you know he's going to die. So we was like, we took too much poison at that point. We was like, yo, Egypt's going to die, man. Like, we ain't going to maintain this shit. And the shit fell. And when I say fell, the lights turned off for the ancient world. Yeah, because remember, Egypt was the temple of the entire ancient world. Yeah. And the lights turned off from Babylon to Anatolia to the Indus Valley, yeah, and then eventually Kemet, the lights turned off, and they didn't come back on till the 700s. Let's say 747 BC. Around that time, you get Alara, the king of Kush, and you get his son Kashta coming up into Kemet and kicking out all these interlopers and kicking them out and making their presence felt. And then you get Shabaka, and then by the time you get to Taharqa, he's not having a bar of it. Sorry, you get Pharaoh P2. Yeah, P Yankee, some people call him. Some people say P. Yeah, and then you have his sons and brothers and stuff, Shabaka and his son Taharqa. And when he gets to Taharqa, he ain't having a bar of it. Like I said, they put him in the Bible. That's how he marched his army all the way up to where today we call Morocco and Gibraltar, what they call the Pillars of Hercules. That's how heavy this guy was rolling. And he was kicking Persian ass and saving the Temple of Jerusalem in the time when the Persians wanted to destroy Jerusalem. God said, yo, I'm going to send my right hand to back you, man, because them Israelites never had no standing proper army. They had a ragtag army. So they had to rely on us because they was our people. I'm talking the black Israelites. You understand? We sent man there. So, yo, no, you're not coming to smash down the temple in our brother's temple in Jerusalem. This is why I say if it wasn't for Taharqa and Nubian Kushite people and the dynastic Nile Valley, there would be no Judaism of today. There would be no Christianity of today. There would be no Islam of today, because them Persians would have smashed that shit down. So we wouldn't have the forms that we have of these religions. They owe us, our ancestors. Yeah, and when they're telling you about Israelites, they're really telling you about Nubian Kushite people, from the tassels, the way that they dress, to the way that they look, the Judahites, the Yahudi who are black. And then you go into North Africa today, you can find Falasha, and you can find Lemba people and black Israelites like Dr. Ben himself, who came out of a black Israelite family. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, yeah, man, this is what I'm saying. But I just wanted to say this, man. God is not who you think he is when you read your scriptures, yeah? If you read Samuel 15, it gives you the story of Saul. This is Samuel, verse 15, Samuel, the prophet of God. And when you read Saul 15, you come to the story where God says, tell Saul to go up in here among these people, yeah, and kill everything, yeah? Kill the men because they're evil. He calls everything evil, but he says kill the men, the women, the children, the infants, the cattle, sheep, animals, everything. That's what God says, this all-loving God, yeah? He said to Saul, the first king of Israel. And Saul ended up saving some of the animals because he was going to make a burnt offering with some of these animals. He didn't kill them straight away, yeah? And God was so mad with him because he did that. God said to Saul, he's going to strip him of the kingdom, and stripped him of the kingdom, yeah? And God, and then later down, Samuel says to Saul, because Saul starts begging God, oh, please, God, like, give me back my power, my reign and shit. The man's begging. Do you get me? And Samuel says to him, the prophet, listen, God's not a man that changes his mind. But God said to Saul, when he was ripping Saul and insulting Saul, yeah, he said, listen, I'm going to take that kingdom away from you and give it to someone better than you. That's what he said to Saul. And he says, I anointed you and I regretted it. But Samuel's saying that God doesn't, he's not a man to change his mind. But God repented or regretted making Saul king. That's kind of the same thing. And that's like when you go to Genesis, is it Genesis 7, in the story of Noah, where God regrets making man? Now, ask any Muslim, Christian, or Jew these few questions and see what they tell you, yeah? And lead them. I'm going to show you how to make them listen to what they're saying too. But ask them, does God know everything before it happens? Like, does he have intuition? Is he like the Muslims say, Allah is the all-knowing, El Hakim, yeah? Did does God know everything before it happens? The next question, did God know Adam and Eve would disobey when he created them? When he created them and said, don't eat from this tree, did he know they were going to disobey, or did he not know they were going to disobey? Yeah. And if you say, yeah, he did know, and God knows everything before it happens, then that says more about God than it does about humans. Yeah, because that would mean that God's saying, that you're saying, if God knows everything, and God knows Adam and Eve is gonna sin, yeah, and then he punishes them for something he knew they was gonna do, that don't make no sense for an all-loving God. Do you understand? That's like you knowing your kid's gonna do something, and then when he does it, you punish them. Yeah, that's not right. Did God know the devil would be his enemy? And if God knows everything, and God created the devil, because Genesis 3:1 says, and God and there was a serpent in the garden, and the serpent was the most subtle thing God ever created. So according to this Bible, God created this evil devil, yeah, the most subtle thing in his creation. You understand? So did God know the devil would be his enemy? So God created his own enemy, yeah? And why did God create evil and the devil? Most Muslims I know, because I come from an Islamic family, will say, oh, it's a test. It's to test. To test who? You already said that God knows everything, yeah? So if God knows everything, there's no need for him to test anybody, because he already knows if you're going to go to this hell or this heaven. Do you understand what I'm saying? Why would I trust you with £10 of my money or test you with it when I know you're a thief, yeah, and you're going to steal it? It don't make no sense for me to trust you with it, right? So therefore, if this life is a test, then that means God don't know everything. Do you understand? So saying that our life is a test, that don't cut it no more in 2021. Yeah. Okay, another one, back to the Christians. Why did God kill his son and not the devil? Why did God go through all that effort to kill his son and kill all the people that he killed in the Bible? Because God killed a lot of people, man. I'm sure in that Samuel 15, God also killed about 3,000 people because he saved them from Egypt. And they started worshipping the golden calf instead of him. So he got vexed, yeah, and turned schizo on them and wiped out 3,000 of them. Yeah. So now I'm asking the Christians, why does God just not kill the devil? Yeah. Why would he kill his son and not kill the devil? Has God even ever tried killing the devil in the Bible? Have you ever read anywhere in the Bible, because I haven't, that God tried to kill the devil? Do you understand? Okay, back to the Muslims. Is all things really by God's will or Allah's will? If you say everything is by Allah's will, then why are we punished for Allah's will? That means we don't have freedom of choice or free will, like you lot say Allah gave man free will. But if Allah gave man free will, it would be free to do evil. But that's not the case, because if we had free will, that means we could do good and evil with no consequence because we've got free will. That's not right. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you say limited free will, okay, I get you, but if all things are by God's will, because God is his will is not limited, then why are we humans punished for God's will? Especially if God knows everything. Remember what you're saying, God knows everything, yeah, as Al Hakim, the Noah. So and he already if he knew Adam and Eve would disobey and he knew humans would be the way that we are now and everything is by his will and he created the devil, then why are humans punished for God's will, like Adam and Eve and the tree and the serpent? Yeah. And Mr. Christian, what does God mean when God said, now the man has become as one of us to know good and evil? This is Genesis 3:22. Now the man has become as one of us. So these human beings have become like the gods. Yeah. You say God, I say the gods, Elohim, yeah, plural. So now man has become like one of the gods, yeah, good and bad, yeah. That was really speaking about one of the upgrades performed by Enki that he wasn't supposed to perform according to the Sumerian tablets to make human beings more smarter. The bulk of the council wanted to keep us dumb, as dumbed down slaves, as like robotic drones. But Enki gave us what's called the Kundalini consciousness and the power of the chakra system so that we could liberate and become gods ourselves. What is your God doing for you if if you are a religious person? Yeah, does God answer your prayers? And if you say yes, then what about all the unanswered prayers in the world that God doesn't answer? Can God be just? If you're saying God answers your prayers and there's children out here dying of hunger and people dying from bomb strikes on their house and they ain't got nothing to do with it, yeah, and God's dealing with favoritism in the scriptures saying he's choosing this family, the family of Imran, over other families, yeah, is God really all loving based on what I said about God saying not to mix with these people and that people? No, yeah. And does your Bible and your Quran condone slavery? If you're truthful as a Christian and a Muslim, you're going to have to say yes. And that leads to the topic of the Zanzibar slave trade that happened under the banner of Islam and is still happening. And also the transatlantic dehumanization of African people, which happened under the banner of Christianity. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'll end on this. All of this stuff that they done after we gave them these religions to make them better people and based them on partial truths. We gave them allegories in certain cases and just stories that will make them better. But there are truths in there that the biggest stories in there are based on certain Egyptian mysteries and Sumerian truths and stuff. Do you understand? And one of the biggest truths in that is that when you're dealing with gods and angels and demons, you're just dealing with extraterrestrials. Do you understand? From the time it comes, shows you in Genesis 6, verse 1 to 7, and in those days there were giants, and the sons of God came down. That means they were up there, Shamayim or Samawati, the skies in Arabic and Hebrew. Yeah. And they came down here and bred with these daughters of men and produced what's called hybrids or Nephilim. And these beings that came down 12,000 years ago at the beginning of the third cycle out of four. Yeah, when you get to Genesis 9:25, that's telling you about these beings that came down and mixed in that recessive gene into the blood pool of the earth, manifested as Canaan, the one called Libna in Genesis 9:25, who was cursed with this bloodline from these fallen angels. So he had the genes of the Halabian or the Neanderthal or the caveman. Yeah, and out of him running up into the Caucasus Mountains and mixing with these cave people, you get groups like the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim, and they got grafted into what's today called Khazars, which occupied the Middle East, yeah, Zionism and all that. And that's a kind of man that you was warned about in the Sumerian tablets when you first read about the story of Enkidu, yeah, the beast man that lived among the animals and shagged animals and all that stuff. That he's talking about them cave people, the beast man that came through the Altai mountains from the Caucasus. They came from the Caucasus mountains, but when they came into Turkey, they came through the Altai mountains, yeah, and they came down into Iran and named themselves Aryan or Iran. You understand, which means noble, yeah, or learnt man, yeah. And they are the people of the Alpha Draconians that are spoken about in Genesis 3, the serpent seed, yeah. And they's the ones that come with all these religions of isms, your Mosism, your Christism, and your Mohammedism. And they come from the Pleiadian seeds or the Pleiadian seed and the Aldebaran seed, because they're the two seeds in the cosmos that the reptilians use for slaves and for food. They created their own food source and slaves, which is called the Tall White Nordics or Pleiadian group. You understand what I'm saying? And also, sorry, they created the Aldebaran group as their slaves from the Pleiadian group. The Pleiadian group were originally made by outsider beings, the Anunnaki, and some of them are got melanin and some of them ain't. But grafted out of that original group of Pleiadians, the Alpha Draconians grafted their tall white group, like in the Prometheus movie, yeah. And from their tall white group that they use for a food source, yeah, that group is 3,000 years ahead of the Muzungu on Earth. They're the ones who created the Muzungu on Earth, so they could use them as a food source instead of themselves. Because I was like, listen, we're being eaten and attacked by our masters, these reptilians. We've got to know how to create clones. Now, we might as well create some clones and give them an alternative. You understand what I'm saying? So when you're talking about and the Canaan story, that happened 6,000 years ago at the beginning of this last cycle that we've just seen pass. We're in a totally new 25,000 years, 25,920 year cycle, and we're in a completely new 24,000 year cycle. Both cycles are happening at the same time, yeah, cycles within cycles. So the cycle to do with the circumference of the Earth, 24,000 years, which is to do with the circumference, which is 24,000 and some change. We just went through 4 cycles of it. So all of that December the 21st stuff, what was talking about the Great Conjunction and the alignment, that was a sign, okay, bang, we're in a fresh 25,920 years. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's how important of a point we're at when he was talking about this Great Conjunction. Why is it special? That don't happen for another 25,920 years. And then within inside that cycle, you've got the cycle of the circumference of the earth. You understand? The bigger cycle is to do with the zodiac and going around the black hole, which takes, as I said, 25,920 years. So you got 2,160 years times 12, which is the 12 houses of zodiac. The sun will rise in each of them houses for 2,160 years. Then you go to the next house, then go to till it's made a full circle. Do you understand? That's where we was. And every time that happens, there's a renewal of truth throughout the cosmos, a renewal of truth. So it's a fail-safe. You can't just corrupt the truth and come with these false doctrines and think it's going to last forever. At the end of every cycle, the shit resets. That's a Mother Nature reset. We're not talking World Economic Forum with Klaus Schwab's. We're talking Mother Nature, Mata Neta, yeah? She has her own reset in the cosmos, her and Father Time. And every 25,000 years, the truth is renewed and it comes back to the surface. You can't hold it down no more. So when they speak about their end and seeing their end before it happened, they're speaking from that perspective where they had all their technology, Operation Looking Glass and all of that stuff. And they realize, hold on, there's going to be a massive awakening. The people are going to overthrow us. How can we avoid this? And up to now, they've not figured out how to how to avoid it, how to prevent it. It's not possible. Every time they try and move the goalposts, it leads to the same ending. The end won't change for them. It's set. Do you understand? So I just wanted y'all to understand a bit about them gods that they're showing you in religion. That's the yellow brick road. Whatever religion you're talking about, as long as it's official and it's recognized in this world where it has institutions officially and shit, yeah, that shit there's a scam. Yeah, it's a scam. And that's just the yellow brick road. And each one of them gods behind that screen in that religion, that's like the Wizard of Oz. When you take that screen away and you find that Allah in their Islam, what they're giving you, that's a reptilian, I guarantee you. That's why you can't see his ass. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it's the same in the synagogue. When you're looking for that Yahweh that they're showing you with that false doctrine that they've scribbled up, if you don't know how to read and discern that doctrine and take yourself beyond the King James Bible and actually learn some Hebrew and Aramaic so you could learn how the words work and root words and shit like that, I'm telling you, you do yourself a favor. I was going to read to you guys from one of my books on what side of history, but I've already been 2 hours. So what I'll do, if I get enough likes or enough comments or whatever, I'll gladly sit down for an hour and read from the book, because I could go so much further with this and actually draw examples all day out of your Torah, Bible, and Quran to show you that who they told you was God, that's not who the Bible's telling you about. Them Alpha Draconians took out the real teachings in certain important places and put themselves there. That's why God's telling Eve, I'm going to put enmity between you and the serpent seed. Why would God put enmity anywhere? That means that God didn't even create all this confusion, this enmity and stuff. I mean, the devil. The devil didn't do it. Your Bible saying God did it. God's saying deliberately he made the devil, and he's put the enmity between reptilians and humans. And God's telling you, yo, God wanted to kill Moses because Moses don't want to circumcise himself. And he's killing Hebrews, yeah, because they don't want to praise him. They've just come out of Egypt. They miss Egypt. So they started praying to this golden calf while Moses is up on the mountains. God has got no problem wiping out 3,000 of them, or killing all the firstborns in Egypt. You understand what I'm saying? Or killing animals and telling you he loves the sweet savor of burnt offerings, burning flesh. These are reptilians in your religion, but they've programmed us not to be able to see it. We want to deny it. You understand? We don't want to believe that, yo, Islam's infiltrated that Orthodox Islam. Mainstream. They're getting that shit into your mainstream. Yeah, that shit's diluted down like, yo, to the point where that can't even hold no more water. That's like mixing orange juice till ain't even no orange juice left in the bitch. Yeah, that's your Islam of today. That shit is diluted. Some Semitic Arabicism. Yeah, that's totally insane. Yeah, that don't make no sense. And I could pick that apart all day. And that's no disrespect to all the true Muslim sons and daughters who knows. Me saying that doesn't take away from the fact that the Most High, whether you want to call him Allah or Yahweh or God, exist. I'm just talking about the schematics and the politics of how they've made this shit. They've literally rendered it incapable of helping us because we don't understand how much they've diluted it and blunted the message in there. The same goes for the Torah. The same goes for the Bible. But all them malaikat in the Quran, or Allahumma, and they keep translating Allahumma, which means Allah's, is plural. It's like Elohim. Elohim and Allahumma in the Quran is the same word. But notice how these Muslims, they don't expect us to be able to know Arabic or the dialects of Arabic. So they translate it as Oh Allah. It's not no Oh Allah. It's like Yo Elohim or Ya Necheru. Group. You're addressing a group of beings. But they putting it in English as Oh Allah. You understand? Yo, it's crazy. So yeah, don't let nobody tell you no shit, man. They're dealing, them scriptures are dealing with the same Necheru, the same Anunnaki, yeah, who is actually extraterrestrial supreme beings, the supreme ones, the ancient ones who came from the sky. And this goes to the point I was making earlier when I was saying that principalities of nature, and they came into this dimension to test run it. So they did personify as flesh and blood beings, because you get half of us that say, oh, the Neteru weren't beings, they're principalities, and that's a half truth. And when people say, oh no, they weren't principalities, they were real beings, aliens and shit, that's half truth. Both of them truths together is the truth. Where, like I said, you existed in the spiritual plane before you came into this plane, and you will leave this plane the same way the Neteru left this plane. Do you understand? So, yeah, with that being said, tune in for more, because I'm gonna keep linking the UFO. I didn't even know I blabbed on for so long. I'm gonna keep linking the UFO exposure that we're having today in modern times with the Asian astronaut hypothesis that I've been speaking about for 20 years anyway, in all my books, in all my work, that these Neteru or Mayan gods and deities, they're actually star beings or star people, just like the natives, all indigenous, tell you. They're star beings who come from other dimensions, which means other worlds. Do you understand? And they came and they kick-started this realm, and they have ones that have humans' best interests at heart, and they have different other groups that don't have humans' best interests at heart. And that's where you get all these stories of angels and demons. And these churches and these mosques and these synagogues, they edited that part out. And they just spooked you out and want you to believe in some spookism. We're the only people in the cosmos, and it's just all spooky, and fear God and fear Allah, fear punishment and fear hell and fear your government. And yo, that's the whole shit is all about that. So I hope that goes some way in helping you lot discern the truth in religion, because there is truth in there. Yeah, but it's not what your pastor, your imam, or your rabbi is trying to shout from the pulpit or giving a khutbah. Yeah, all of that shit there is programmed to keep us in just the 10% of our brain. It's only when you come outside of the box and get rid of the box totally, there's no box, do you understand, that you start really piecing this whole shit together. So thanks for joining me, guys. I'm going to leave you with that. Please like and share, and tune back in. Peace.